Hey everyone, this is Southern Fried Chat again here with the one and only Spacey. She has been in SPX since the beginning, still bull posting every day. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a while. I know you've been trying to coordinate it, but with the start of the school year, and then I fortunately got to go to Token 2049 in Singapore.
Nice.
This was sort of the earliest possible date we both could do it, and I'm really appreciative for your time.
Awesome. Yeah, me too. Me too. How was the Token 2049?
Oh, it was awesome. I think I kind of used it as an opportunity. You know, I'm always shilling sort of indiscriminately to everybody. And I've been doing that since 2 years ago at East Denver. But
Wow.
I would say in terms of just people having an initial awareness of SPX 6900, this really felt like the first sort of IRL event where I didn't necessarily have to preface it by like, here's what SPX 6900 even is. And was more like the nature of the conversation was more like, where do you go from here? Because it's been such an unbelievable success. How do you imagine this sort of evolving beyond the current position it's in? So it was just incredible. Got to meet a lot of good new people. People from the community, some of the OGs, like Peach, for example, I got to come across. So I mean, with the OG lore, anyone who knows Stop Trading and Believe in Something was, it originated from Backroll. And Backroll had DM'd Peach, Stop Trading and Believe in Something, and had blocked Peach. And Peach has a huge platform on Twitter and had posted the screenshot of this. So we were kind of just reminiscing. It was the first time we got to encounter each other in person. So that was probably one of the highlights of Token for me.
That's awesome. It's cool that it feels like less of an uphill battle. It sounds like trying to get people to recognize it and notice it.
Yeah, it's kind of though, they can't always comprehend that, just because, you know, a lot of people look at success in terms of valuation. And when you're a meme coin that's exceeded a $1 billion valuation, a lot of people think like, that's it. Like you've accomplished your goal. Like there's not much more you're going to do beyond here.
Right.
So I think especially people coming from an institutional background, getting them to understand on a deeper level why we're actually here, which is totally decoupled from the valuation of the token. That is still a bit of an uphill battle.
Right.
But it's a really enjoyable one.
Yeah, I think that's the next phase. It sounds like to get people in the bigger ballparks to understand things.
Yeah.
So I know everybody knows you and maybe have some insight into you, but I know I don't. So I'm sure others don't as well. So can you give us some like background into your crypto journey prior to SPX?
Sure. Let's see, where do I even start? Well, I think I have to preface it with some context that is not at all related to crypto. So before getting into SPX, I had been both a part of the Occupy Wall Street protests in New York City. And additionally, I had been a part of the GameStop short squeeze saga.
Cool.
So I would say that without Reddit and without the subreddit Wall Street Bets, I probably would not eventually have stumbled upon crypto. I had discovered GameStop there. I was really interested in the direction that Ryan Cohen was taking the company. And it kind of traces back to what we all know to be true now, which is when you invest in anything, you're investing in people. And that was one of the sort of fundamental theses that Roaring Kitty or DFV had with his sort of retail investment in GameStop, which drove a lot of retail sentiment into that particular stock.
Right.
And so that, you know, just being a part of that experience and seeing the upward momentum and the short squeeze playing out in real time where, you know, it had been shorted like to infinity. and people became aware of this concept of naked shorting, where
Yeah.
institutions don't even need to have ownership. They can cover after the fact. And so there were some big institutions who were shorting the stock, and then, the stock valuation starts to sort of exponentially rise. And now they're having to cover their positions by
Yeah.
buying in. And so anyway, I had gone to buy more because I wanted to have a bigger position. There was a lot of momentum. I felt like it wasn't over, but it had just maybe sort of reached a critical mass. And this was January of 2021. Yeah, January
Sure.
2021.
Yep. Yep.
Um, so I had gone to buy, but I had gone to buy on Robinhood because that was how retail had kind of been onboarded into trading. And so
Yep.
it was where I was trading. I was trading options. I was dabbling,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
mostly GameStop. And so, then I couldn't buy. They turned off the buy button. And that was sort of one of the big catalysts for me to venture into decentralized finance, where um, there's no gatekeeping, I guess you could say. Be your own bank is kind of the concept. And actually, GameStop really bridged the gap for people in retail to be onboarded to crypto, because one of the things we were doing after that short squeeze happened was something called DRS, which basically meant directly registering your shares. So when you just buy, say on Robinhood, shares of a company, they don't need to buy at the price that you execute the trade. There's something called payment for order flow.
Yep.
So they presume that they're going to outperform you, and they will actually hold off on buying those shares sometimes until they can execute at a better price, and they take the difference and so on. But basically, there became this movement to directly register your shares by taking them off of the centralized exchanges, and registering them directly through the transfer agent, which for GameStop was computer share, but essentially it was like you finally had those shares, and they had to be actual shares. Like back in the old days, you used to get like these certificates that
Right.
entitled you to, X number of shares of the stock. So really, it's kind of an electronic version of that.
Understood. Yeah.
And so that was my sort of bridge into decentralized finance, being your own bank. And I got into Dogecoin really around the same time as the short squeeze saga, before Elon Musk had really started talking about it. So kind of just in time. And I loved the culture of Dogecoin. I loved the memetics behind it. And I got out too soon, like many people did. And Pepe was my next exposure. I got in Pepe and Wojak like day one that they launched.
Yeah.
And I actually onboarded my students through Pepe, and I was like, this is a meme, and it's also like a tokenized meme, and what a brilliant concept, and like what and just introducing them to the concept of DeFi and how they could get onboarded, and use decentralized exchanges rather than centralized. And I said to them, I'm going to get out of this position too early, and it's going to end up being the worst trade of my existence. And that was what happened. But I had, it served its purpose in that it added legitimacy to the memetics and the meme coin culture. And it kind of planted that seed of like, I don't want to screw this up again.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so then when I discovered SPX, it was like, this is it. This is my opportunity. And it felt like an amalgamation of all of those things. It
Hmm.
had the sort of counterculture, sort of like anti-establishment sentiment that you saw in like the GameStop short squeeze saga and Occupy Wall Street. But it also had like this amazing level of like aesthetics and a sense of humor to it, where like, oh, we're just saying these nonsensical things. And I think Milady really kind of shifted the culture in favor of like, you can just say whatever you want. And SPX 6900 kind of ran with that. So that's how I got into crypto, and then specifically
Sure.
into SPX.
About the so for you when you were in got into GameStop, what was the idea in your head? Was because I feel like there's people have different approaches. Some people look at like fuck the system kind of
Yeah.
generically, and some people are just like we're specifically trying to fuck these hedge funds. That's what it was for me. I didn't actually buy any, but I was like looking at it. I was like, I love to see it. I was like, that's awesome. So how did
Yeah.
you look at it? I guess.
Well, so it always, and this is also, I think, a place, it's kind of a commonality between GameStop and SPX. Um, the first layer of it that struck me is this is funny. So
Yeah.
at first,
Yep.
like the bait was the mimetics, and I'm like, the meme videos are great. I want to participate in this. There was this like proactive nature that you no longer have to be a passive sort of participant in things. You can be a more proactive and a sort of like impactful market sort of participant, which a lot of the times, like big funds and market makers have the sort of like size to move markets, but it hadn't yet happened at scale for retail. And it was the first occasion where it was like, oh, shoot, if we all participate in the mimetics, we actually have some pull, like some like visible pull in the form of sentiment. And now they write research papers on it. People do entire studies like, what is the impact of sentiment? And like, you can do natural language processing and you can scrape from the Twitter API what were people tweeting at the time that this price action happened. And you can actually gauge positive versus negative
Mm-hmm.
sentiment. You can do topical analysis where like they were mostly interested in this aspect versus another. And there is now statistical evidence that retail sentiment can move markets. And so while it started as something I wanted to participate in because it was just sort of funny and a little bit of like an F the system, whatever. Like I've always been anti-establishment, or for at least like the entirety of my adult life, I've been very anti-establishment. I think we've been driven around by narratives and other people's sort of underlying motives for too long. I think that corporations have too much power. I think that it infiltrates like political narratives on all sides of the spectrum. So while it was a sort of like F the system kind of thing, it was
Yeah.
also like almost a case study in like what can potentially happen when large masses of people come together and have this shared purpose
Sure.
surrounding
Yep.
something. So yeah, and like functionally speaking, it's what you said. Like we're going to screw over Melvin Capital or whatever. At the
Mm-hmm.
time, that
Mm-hmm.
was one of the funds that was shorting GameStop to
Right.
oblivion. But I think with SPX 6900, we actually use the S&P 500 as something symbolic of something a little bit greater. Um, I think it is a sort of systemic thing that we have this shared purpose of like, for too long, market participants have actually passively thrown their retirement funds into the S&P 500. And the S&P 500 is like this aggregate of companies that are actually destroying civilization in sort of this multi-dimensional sense, like through all sectors. Um, so, I mean, it's sort of multifaceted. It's like I got in it for the sort of humorous, like I'm purely getting entertainment value out of this, but I also stayed in it. And I think I stayed in it long term because it was like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
there's actually a deeper sense of purpose here. And I'm curious to see what happens when people come together and sort of coordinate.
Right. 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 Yeah, I had. I actually had our. I had this. I had a guide that was going to guide our conversation. I had the GameStop thing down below, but this felt more natural. So I do have a question that I think is sort of related. I'm kind of curious about if you can go into your college. I know you're a professor, correct? Like
Yeah.
what do you teach? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so my degrees are actually in philosophy and physics.
Okay.
So I have a BA in philosophy and I have a BS in physics. And I have taught both at a university level, physics, The students I was teaching, I did this for several semesters, were usually pre-med students.
Okay.
It was usually an algebra-based course, but because they were pre-med students, I would always add calc into the sort of curriculum just because they were capable of handling it. But I also full-time am a high school teacher,
Okay.
and it's one of the best high schools in the country. And I teach both physics there, and I also teach a multitude of research courses there.
Oh, that's awesome. So cool, cool, cool. So you think there's any synergies between your work as a teacher and SPX and your work in SPX?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been thinking a lot about, okay, so I'll give you a little bit of context in the research area. I actually mentor a lot of AI based projects.
Okay.
So even though my background is physics, I've dabbled a lot in AI, whether it's, natural language processing or computer vision, object detection, and so on. And so, AI tools right now are being integrated into a lot of different fields, including like medical diagnostic tools, including agricultural settings, and so on. So I mentor a lot of these different kinds of projects, but actually, in having mentored these things, I've become very interested in just different architectures of different types of AI models. Because I think it gives me a little bit of insight. I mean, obviously, it's meant to model the way like the human brain works and the way we sort of have all of the sensory equipment to receive information. We have the
Mm,
photoreceptors. We have like these little hairs in our ears that can receive sound waves at their respective wavelengths. So we have like the sensory processing tools and the way that data gets sort of concatenated and like interpreted to create understanding and create meaning of the things that we encounter iteratively. And recently, just I've been reading a lot about mimetic algorithms. And I've become really, really interested in the way information can get disseminated in the most efficient way. And so, one of the things that mimetic algorithms do is they tap into kind of like prior knowledge or some pre existing framework of understanding. And that facilitates like more efficient transfer of information. Now, as a teacher, that's what I do in the classroom,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Because in the classroom, when students don't understand something, I'm creating analogies to things that they
Hmm.
already know in order to more efficiently disseminate that information. But in SPX, what are we doing, right? We make these memes and we are tapping into something. So at face value, we're going to flip the stock market. It's F the system, anti-establishment, whatever.
Hmm.
But and that's really funny. And people are familiar with anti-establishment sentiment, right?
Yep.
But on a deeper level, every single person has encountered someone who is suffering because of the current financial paradigm we're operating in. And so the mimetic algorithm there is like, we're going to flip the stock market. Like things are fundamentally wrong here, and you're tapping into, there's like that deeper knowledge of like, in the words of Undi's video, which I've been trying to use everywhere, and this is part of my sort of thesis on mimetic algorithms, is just like planting these seeds so that when it strikes again, it's like, oh shoot, that's already in there. The system is broken, and you know it, you feel it, right? Like you know it and you feel it, right? Like
Hmm.
on a deeper human level. Even if you are not struggling financially, you have encountered people, whether it's while you're on the subway, just in passing. And because we are inherently empathic, um, it means something to you. So when someone says to you, like, we're going to shift this paradigm, that's like, oh shoot, I can envision a better world than this one. I've experienced what this world is, and I can envision it sort of evolving out of the current state that it's in. So I think that's where there's kind of this sort of resonance between what I get to do in the context of teaching research, which is I have this fascination with these different like AI algorithms.
Mm.
And it helps clarify in my mind like what we're already doing with the memes that we create and why it has reached such a critical mass so quickly.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. I don't really. I mean, I use AI a good bit, but the generalized models is. You said there's different uh, algorithms.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
They do all different types of things. So for example, when you go to get an MRI scan,
Hmm.
perhaps they're taking an image of one of your organs and they're saying, okay, here is a kidney. And I have been able to classify that as a kidney against all the different other organs that are there structurally. So it'll look at it and say, this is most statistically similar to other kidneys that I have been trained with. It's like the model is studying for a test and it is studying to learn how to identify a kidney. And then it's studying how to learn how to distinguish between a cyst and something that is not a cyst or everything else. And so this is one example of like maybe a computer vision type of algorithm that will sort of create a segmentation. It'll like actually color, it'll create a color mask over the organ of
Right.
interest. And it'll say, this is a kidney based on like its own statistical interpretation that you can't see happening, but is happening behind the scenes. But that's one type of algorithm. Another type of algorithm is like what I was mentioning before, like different natural language processing algorithms,
Yeah.
which will say, I have learned based on data, like this is all supervised learning. So you give it data, and the data might be text, like sentences that
Sure.
are labeled as like, this is positive sentiment, this is negative sentiment, and it learns how to distinguish between the two. And now, when you scrape free text
Sure.
data from like Twitter, you can actually, the model can, in an automated fashion, categorize it. So a lot of what AI models are doing is really just categorizing things that are statistically similar and separating them from things that are statistically different.
I think. I guess is the end goal with all of it to combine all those algorithms into just one massive thing. One,
Yeah, and that is the concept of singularity, that at some point the machine is going to outperform the human. I'm very bearish on the concept of singularity because I think the human is the like pinnacle of supercomputers, and especially when put in conjunction with other humans. I think that network is something that you cannot surpass unless you dumb down the human race, which I think is how the tech world is trying to create the illusion of singularity. But yes.
okay. Yeah. I mean, just for instance, I'm like terrible with home repair stuff, but I have found like Chat GPT and Grok helpful. I'll be like, here's a picture of this. What the hell do I do? And it just tells me what to
Yeah.
do, which is nice
Yeah.
because I'm not good at that stuff.
Yeah.
So I have found it. I know there is a lot of negative sentiment towards AI, but it's like any other technology. I think it's a double edged sword. If you use it like
Yeah.
just to consume all
Totally.
day, it's not good. But if you use it as a tool to help you, it's good.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree with that. Like I love mentoring AI projects and I won't reject them flat out, but if the model is just something they're going to optimize and say they got higher accuracy, I'll be like, "No. How can we integrate this into a device that makes it useful? Like at face value, you can actually leverage this algorithm you've optimized." But I totally agree with you. I think like as long as humans are continuing to like don't become complacent, continue to utilize their sort of sensory instrumentation, continue to produce and be creative and be critical thinkers, then there is a world in which they can live harmoniously together.
Hmm.
I just don't think that's the direction we're currently moving in. I think people are so busy trying to survive and like make a living for themselves that there isn't the sufficient time to create. And so they're defaulting to that sort of complacency consumption sort of
Hmm.
existence.
Yeah, it does feel like it's. I think it's if there is like Elon Musk and several other people have said like infinite abundance and all that stuff, so there will be no. I mean, I think UBI would be like baked into the cake at that point if it's literally like we have so much and it's like a snap of a finger, you just instantly get whatever you want or whatever. If it's that
Yeah,
simple, then I think there would just be a world of it wouldn't be haves or have-nots. It'd be just creators and non-creators, consumers and
that's
non.
right.
I think that would be like the end state.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's I see it that way too. Um, so to shift gears again, um, when you got into SPX, SPX, what was the exact timing of that?
So you know what? It's interesting. I've never really gone back on chain to see what day one was. I got in a couple days after it launched.
Wow. Okay.
So I was in August 2023. Definitely it was middle of August. I want to say probably the third week of August. It launched, what was it, August 16th. So it must have been maybe like 4 days after that or something. But I remember seeing it before, as a teacher, I have my summers, although I do work through them because I mentor research projects all summer. And I remember seeing it on the timeline and thinking, like, this aesthetic is sick. I wasn't really sure, like, so the narrative wasn't as concretely clear just yet about
Mm-hmm.
flip the stock market. It was more like the girl is cute. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
was more about Marie Rose at the
Mm-hmm.
time. And in the sort of, I guess the foreground was Marie Rose, and then in the background of that, it was kind of like, oh yeah, and we're going to flip the S&P 500's market cap. And back then, by the way, the S&P 500's market cap was 37 trillion. So just a little side note for anyone who has seen a lot of the older SPX content, if you see 37 trillion, that's because it was the valuation at the time when this thing had originally launched. Obviously, now S&P 500 is approaching $6,900.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so
Which is kind of fun.
uh,
Yeah.
it's moved significantly since, but so I got in because I was like, oh, the aesthetic is cool, but I didn't get in size. At the time, meme coins were not a huge thing. But I was really interested in just the general aesthetic. And then Friend Tech was popular at the time. It had just launched.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, so like for those who don't know what Friend Tech is, it's basically like it was like Instagram kind of, but it was like a tokenized Instagram. So like you might have to pay for a subscription to someone else's Instagram account. And you could sell your subscription also, and the value of it might increase. But so I was following
Yeah.
Cold. Yeah,
Yeah.
so Cold was a milady, huge in the meme coin space. And I was following his friend tech, and I saw him write about SPX, and I already had interest in it. And I had just gone on a trip. I had gone to LA, and it was sticky. Like I couldn't get it out of my head. And so I come back and I see Cold has made a post about SPX, and I'm like, well, it did stick with me. Like there's something here. I don't know what it is. But I was intrigued by it. And Cold made a post and it was something like, or no, I had written to him and I was like, I bought in like a small amount, but like I was debating getting more exposure because it stuck with me. And I remember Cold wrote something back to me that was along the lines of like, I think this one is going to be a long-term play. Or like, I think you play the long game on this one. And that really, really stuck with me. And maybe I even took it more to heart than Colt himself did. But he said that, and I kind of like it stewed in my mind a little bit, and I'm like, all right, like I think he's right about this, so let me just like buy a little bit more. And then I became a little bit more invested in the Telegram and making memes. And I
Mm-hmm.
had never made memes yet. I had only consumed, right? This
Yeah.
goes
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
to the whole
Mm-hmm.
sort of dichotomy of like, there are the creators and the consumers. And I had only ever consumed media in the GameStop short squeeze saga. And I always like really kind of admired the creators. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, these are the reason that we have this kind of retail sentiment. Like this is the bait that people are latching onto. And so with SPX, I was like, whatever, I'm going to suck at this, but I'm just going to make a meme.
Mm-hmm.
My first video was like kind of inspired by some of the GameStop content. But as soon as I started making content, even though the early stuff was not my best and, no one would expect it to be, but, you get like any kind of reaction, right? You create
Mhm.
this stimulus and it evokes a response. And there's this sort of like feedback loop that happens. It's like, oh, shoot, like maybe I should try and get better at this because like you're giving energy, but then you're receiving energy back. And some of it is egotistical, but like there's also this like resonance. Like I
Mhm.
can't really explain it, but there's this energetic resonance that happens where it's no longer you just tweeting into the abyss. It's like you've put out content and
Mhm.
that content struck someone and they like now are creating this feedback loop. They might write back to you with a meme or they
Yeah.
might write back to you just saying like how entertaining your content was. And so once that sort of dynamic was created for me, it was a done deal. Like once I was participating in it, I was going to be in it forever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I know what you mean. Definitely. It is taking that next step to create something makes it, I think, all the better. Um,
yeah.
so what were those like early days like kind of compared to today?
The early days kind of had this like we didn't have the level of certainty that we all have now, where
Sure.
at this point in our minds like there's an inevitability, and some of that inevitability is like I think for the OGs it's seeing the contrast of like back in the day we had to do so much work to sort of carry this whole thing, and now it's like on autopilot. Like people like you and people like, Cow and Matt and Cryptic Mong and everyone is like, and Tons, like everyone's coming together in their own little pockets and developing their little niche sort of role without any prompting. It's like totally unsolicited. And so there are now these subcultures that are forming, and these subcultures have a life of their own.
Yes.
But back then, it was kind of like the uncertainty and this like raw sort of like passion, and in a way, like we kind of I want to say it launched during like kind of a bear market where
Hmm.
everything, there were some memes that had run, everything was correcting, and all of a sudden, like SPX kind of comes out of nowhere. And there was like this, I want to say, like, I don't remember, was it malicious ignorance? We had a word for it, but the KOLs were all ignoring that we existed. And we didn't care. We were like, we're going to just brute force our way into the forefront. Like at some point, they're just not going to be able to look away. So like we're doing daily spaces. We're listening to Idea Hazard talk about how he's using pine pollen. And like these really like absurd, totally unrelated conversations are happening on a daily basis. And we're just forming like these real human relationships, and we're going through everything together. We're like riding out the market conditions together. And it's like, all right, like let's develop a culture. We were kind of in the beginning stages of like we get to shape this into whatever we want to. And we had the dev had gotten out. The way they had exited was burning 6.9% of the supply, which was their token allocation. And we're like, number one, that's a really bullish exit. And number two, now we have this opportunity to sort of create this into what we think it could be. So maybe there are going to be no charts. Maybe like we're going to say that this is an all girl coin. Like we would just create and test out new narratives, and it was playful. So I would say early on, it was playful and
Sure.
raw and experimental. And nowadays, it's kind of like we have found where we fit in.
Yep.
Um, and now it's more like mission oriented,
Yeah.
which is a cool progression.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I've been a part of some memes in that early state, so I can relate to what you're saying. They just didn't work out.
Mm,
But I do know that feeling of being in a Telegram early days, and it's exciting, and
yeah.
creating memes, and it's like everything you're doing, it feels real. Um, so I definitely can relate to that. Uh, Unfortunately for me, that didn't work out. But looking back on it, I do have some insights. It's like those memes, their memetics were weak. You know what I mean? Those different coins were weak. It was
Yeah.
just had the fun element. It didn't really, it didn't have. It was just something missing. And I think SPX has that right, whatever that is. I mean, because it could have easily have failed. You know, it's just something like I don't know. It's just perfect storm of things that were right.
Yeah. And I'm fully on the same page as you, where it's like where the memes often end is this is fun or this is funny or this is cute.
You can't
And
persist for a long time with
exactly.
this is fun.
Exactly.
That's all it is.
Yeah,
Eventually, it gets old.
exactly. Yeah.
So yeah. Yep. 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 Um. So, do you uh do you have any like the I talked to Hype and he was speaking about there was like a rug at the beginning and then the coach candle was like almost like a second rug kind of. So what was the were you a part of the first rug? Were you
Yeah.
there? Okay, so
Yeah.
what happened with that?
So we had just, it was kind of, I want to say it was 2 weeks into the project even existing. And we had just gotten into this sort of dynamic of everyone kind of living in the Telegram. And so it was like you were starting to see the regulars come through the Telegram and like you were in there every waking moment of your existence. So like you were at work, but you were in the Telegram at the
Right.
same time. Like, so anyway, people were literally living in this Telegram. Well, I remember like I drove home from work one night, and all of a sudden, like I go to click on the Telegram and the channel, like it does not exist. It's not there. So then I'm like, wait a minute. All right, let me go on like the Twitter account and see because maybe I lost it or accidentally got rid of it or something. Like I was trying to justify why the Telegram channel would be gone. So, but not thinking, oh, this was intentionally removed.
Sure.
So, um, and this the dev rug, by the way, happened after maybe about a week after they had burned their tokens. So it was peak, it was like manic because people were like, that's so bullish. The dev is a Chad, whatever. Like,
Hmm.
so actually that created this kind of like explosive mania of like, this coin is insane. They just burned at the time, it would have been worth like a $300,000 bag. Now this
Sure.
was right. This is like the very beginning, right? Granted, today that bag would have been insane.
Right.
Uh, so, but they burned it, and so like the joke, one of the memes I had made was like the dev with Marie Rose's face because no one knew who the dev was, shoving a McLaren into an incinerator. And like this, we're
That's
like,
pretty
this
good.
dev is such a Chad, whatever.
Hmm.
They burned their supply. They could have just sold, right? They could have
Hmm.
exited the way everyone else does. So there was this mania that sort of stimulus had created that fed into people living in the Telegram. Like, so the price action was reflecting that there was all this momentum, and all of a sudden I get home from work and the Telegram is gone, and it's like, wait, what, like what's going on here? So then I go on Twitter because I'm like, maybe I need to rejoin or something, and the Twitter account is gone too. And
Mm.
it's like, oh shoot. So now I'm like, who do I know that I've been talking to, because none of us really knew each other yet,
Sure.
or not yet having like the daily Twitter spaces or anything. So I knew Idea Hazard was like one of the main people in the Telegram, and I had reached out to him. We had been in conversation because like we both liked Hegel, like one that's one of my favorite philosophers. And so we were kind of geeking out over that. And I reached out to him and I'm like, is the Telegram channel gone for you? Like, what's going on here? And he's like, I'm trying to figure out what happened. Like, he was talking to other people also, and like, no one knows what's going on. And he's like, Europe is going to wake up to this. We have to start a space. So, because this was, I'm on the East Coast, and it was nighttime. So it
Hmm.
was like
Hmm.
literally within hours, Europe is going to wake up and there's going to be no socials for SPX. So Idea Hazard, Rare Drops, myself, Cold, like there were a handful of us that we joined Twitter Spaces, and we just kind of committed to being up there for the night. Like initially people were like, do we sell? Is it over? Like I remember this conversation happening, and I remember Cold unmuted himself and he was like, I'm doubling down. And it was like, I think people heard that and they were like, okay, well, if Cold is bullish, like, who are we not to be bullish? Because like Cold just had like that platform and like always brought that energy into the Telegram. And so we're like, all right, like if there were unofficial KOLs, Cold would have been one of them.
Sure.
And he was kind of like, I'm doubling down. And then Idea Hazard's like, all right, like, you know what, me too. Or so like, so then it became this thing. And then Idea Hazard is like, who can make a new website? And like now we're delegating stuff off. Rare Drops had like kind of taken on the website. So things started being split up. Someone else was like, I'll make the Telegram, and suddenly we were back up and running. Like within, I want to say, we had dumped. I don't remember what we had run to. We weren't as much not looking at the chart yet. It was kind of after this
Sure.
that became like a bigger thing. But back then, I think we had run to like maybe an $8 million market cap, or at 7 or 8 million. And then we pulled back all the way to like 1.2.
Sure.
And I remember us saying on Spaces, like, if we break below 1 million, like we're done for, because just like the optics of it, people aren't going to touch that again. And so it was just like, all right, like we need to build this stuff back up and we need to stay in Spaces all night long so that when Europe wakes up and discovers there's no Telegram and the old Twitter account is gone, they have a place to go and figure out what's going on. So people were rotating up on stage. They're like, what happened to the Telegram? Da, da, da. So anyway, that night was insane, but people did double down because we recovered a few $1 million in market cap that night. We didn't like, like reprice or anything like that, but like we reclaimed a level that was a relevant level to us. I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was around $4 million market cap. But yeah, so after the dev rug, then it was like Idea Hazard was kind of the main guy, and like also kind of the self-proclaimed main guy. And he started hosting his daily Twitter spaces, and we had already been through the chaos of the dev rug. So we kind of, it was like trauma bonding in a way. And so we were all showing up for his spaces like regularly, because we kind of, it was like this unspoken kind of pact that like we were going to do this together.
Yeah. And I want to get your thoughts on this too. I know Hype joined like in October, I think, or something, like a couple months after.
Yeah.
So still extremely early, but not at that time. His theory is he thinks Idea Hazard is the dev.
He could be. Yeah. I mean, I really have a couple of different theories on it. That is one of them, but he will deny it up and down. So it's hard to know. I mean, if he was the dev, he went about it in the most brilliant possible way. And the only reason that I won't fully buy into him when he says he didn't do it is because I think he's smart enough to have done it in such a way that it played out. And I think it was like a chestnut checkers kind of a situation. But then he kind of rugged again, essentially, in the Coke scandal. So that makes me think he isn't the dev, because why would he do that? Exactly. And the reality is it was kind of the worst possible timing when he did so to me it probably makes more sense that he is not.
That's the piece.
I tend to agree with you on that, and for the exact same reason. Because actually we were at a point where we could have continued upward. And he kind of sold a local bottom, and he was getting fatigued with the whole being ignored by all of these big figures in crypto Twitter. And then there was this one thing where I don't remember what it was. Someone was going to make a bet, and it was someone from the SPX community who was going to like put money up I don't remember what the directional bet was, but it was something related to crypto price action. And then Ansem had tweeted about it, but attributed it to someone from a different community. And I remember that being like the nail in the coffin, where it's like, really, like this SPX Chad is saying they're going to put like hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line to like make this bet. And now you're going to attribute it to someone from some random other community. So I think Idea Hazard had worked so tirelessly, and we were all sleep deprived because we were in spaces every night. You know, like most of us were working, including Idea Hazard, full time jobs, then attending Twitter spaces for basically another full time job length of a day, but at night, and then waking up an hour or two later and doing the whole thing over again. And in parallel, you know, he's participating in like the secret projects, developing Project Aeon, like
Hmm.
all of the different bridges, like the wormhole bridge to Solana and all this stuff. And it's
Hmm.
like this has become your life,
Hmm.
and people are going to continue to neglect to acknowledge your existence, even though they're copying your every move. You know, like we were the first meme coin to bridge to Solana and
Hmm.
then the first one to bridge to base. And you'll never really hear about that because other people will kind of try and take credit for having been the first. And um, it was a community driven thing. It was Idea Hazard. It was Backroll. Like there were some people who came together to make this happen.
Yeah, I know a lot
So
of ETH memes have a very, well, at the time at least, now that's it's kind of gone away, but it was kind of like ETH maxi kind of view. You know, fuck
yeah,
Solana, we're not going to go to wormhole then. But and
yeah.
even though it's like the most, especially given the fact that Solana is like the meme chain, is a smart thing. That was
Mm.
a it was a smart thing to do.
It was. It was interesting because they really caught it just at that moment before like everyone was kind of onboarded through Pump.Fun because Pump.Fun
Yeah.
wasn't, it hadn't existed just yet, but it was like on the cusp of coming into existence. And there we are, and all of a sudden all this volume moves on to Solana, and yeah,
Smart. Yeah.
it was a great move. And I'm an ETH maxi because I think that like on a fundamental level, you don't need anything aside from ETH because you have something that you can create infinitely many of and create infinite art infrastructure on with ETH, but you also can create these stores of value that have finite supplies. And so to me, it does like you can make the argument, oh, you only need Bitcoin and ETH. But then when you look at ETH and the fact that you could build some finite store of value on ETH, why do you need anything aside from ETH? So I am an ETH maxi. Part of that is also because I think a lot of the other chains are kind of like VC
Hmm.
chains. And it's not necessarily a bad thing because obviously, like a lot of good dApps can be developed on
Hmm.
things like Solana. So some of the protocols do lend themselves to good tech advancements, but I'm an ETH maxi. But when those bridges were done, it was like, well, this makes complete sense for what we are because number one, we want frictionless exposure. Like you want to get exposure to SPX, you should be able to find a way, no matter whether you're a Solana maxi, a base maxi, whatever the case may be. Um, so I like that. And then on a deeper level, with the whole liquidity pairings sort of meta that a lot of the OGs
Yeah.
started to participate in, like making LPs of SPX with other meme coins across a couple of these other chains, um, it felt like, oh, we're starting to embody being an index if we're
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Hmm.
6900. So
Yeah.
so I really liked going omni-chain in spite of the fact that I'm an ETH maxi.
Right. Well, when you say ETH max, you don't mean like own only ETH. Like
No,
some.
I actually own only SPX.
Yeah. So.
I
Yeah.
really I don't hold ETH, I don't hold Bitcoin, I don't hold Solana. I like literally just hold SPX.
So yeah, but some people interpret maxi as that's the only asset you own, like a
Right, right, right.
Bitcoin maxi. That's what they mean.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean more just from a
the
fundamentals
tech perspective.
perspective. Yes, that's
Yes,
right. That's
I
right.
got what you're saying. Yeah, that makes
Yeah,
sense. That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, you definitely, in theory, only need Ethereum. That's definitely to build
yeah,
all these things. So that's
yeah.
definitely true. Um, The other, I guess, a side thought I had. Some people will say uh, there's no way for SPX to ever be worth more than an ETH because it's built on the chain. Uh, I actually, I 100% disagree with that because ETH is just the tech at the end of the day. Like the asset's important to do the gas and all those things, but it can actually absolutely, I mean, in theory, be worth more than Ethereum because,
Oh, totally.
I mean, well, I mean,
Finite supply and demand. It can happen.
well, also, I mean, Bitcoin and other assets trade on Ethereum. They're fundamentally worth more than Ethereum right now. So
That's right.
it's just a trading vehicle. So yeah.
Hmm.
Now I will say we have some dependence on it because, like, let's say if ETH for some reason got hacked and it stopped working, then
Yeah,
that would be an issue. But
totally.
I mean, I guess we'd have to fork over somehow or do some. I don't know what. I don't. Yeah, whatever. But who
Yeah.
knows? But anyways,
Yeah.
so how did the coach candle? What was that like when that happened?
Oof. So it was January of 2024, January 2024. And I remember sentiment was like, it wasn't great because the market, like the backdrop of the broader market was not, it wasn't showing good momentum. And like time is a flat circle, like where October is often like a manic kind of time. The winter is like, I don't know, the winter.
Yeah.
um, People kind of hibernate a little bit, and the market kind of does the same. And we had a nice run in January, but we corrected significantly. And in conjunction with just there not being a lot of excitement towards us, even though we had just done, it was like we had just done two massive sort of secret projects. The first one was Project Aeon, which was a huge success. And we finally had like this visual identity. So I think the thought was like, we now have a visual identity. We already had the great memes, and this should scale like it's nothing at this point. But it was just no one wanted to acknowledge what we were doing because, in a way, we had kind of decoupled from the market to an extent that other people who felt like they should have run first because they existed first were a little bit upset. There were a couple of factors at play that contributed to sentiment being at what I would consider to be a lull. And then in conjunction with us just all being burned out, we had just
Yeah.
done, I think, 100 something days of consecutive Twitter spaces, 6 to 7 hours a night, most
Mm.
of the time. And we all kind of experienced that burnout at the same time. And then the second big thing being the bridge to Solana, which happened in December of 2023. So November was Project Aeon, December was the bridge to Solana. And it was like these two things should be a differentiating factor for us. We already were kind of outperforming the market. We had a lot of interest and a lot of engagement on our stuff, but it was like, in some people's eyes, and I think especially in coaches' eyes, like the wrong kind of engagement in the sense that, like, why aren't these big crypto Twitter figures acknowledging us? We have done everything that they would ever outline in their playbook and then some. And it's like they still are going to disregard us. There's nothing we can do to win this thing. And I think it was like, I don't know if Coach did it to, I don't know if he did it understanding that it would be a reset. So, like, to your original question of like, well, maybe he isn't the dev because of the coach candle. And in a way, if I'm really thinking ahead, what's going to catalyze number one, good redistribution, because
Hmm.
his argument for selling was there are day one snipers, right? Like sold due to I forget the exact words, but it was like sold due to unwinnable game against day one snipers. And so basically he was saying like this coin needs to be redistributed. And if he needed to catalyze it, because there was a little bit, we were too tight knit of a community. I think it needed to be that keystone needed to be removed. And at the time, he was that keystone. And, after the coach candle, things really fundamentally changed in the sense that we were like, we can never again have key man risk. And so we would always, there were like checks and balances in place where like, if any one person was getting too much to the forefront, it was like, we gotta like shuffle this around a little bit. Um, so when the coach candle happened, I think we were in spaces. It was super, super awkward. And I think when coach sold, rare drops also sold. I don't know if it was like they must have had notifications on for each other's wallets or something, probably scraping data from Etherscan into like a spreadsheet or something. But when coach sold, rare drop sold. And it was kind of this sort of cascading effect where initially I think it only pulled us down to like $6 million valuation or something like that. We were below, it pulled us below 10, significantly below 10. And then with the market, sort of like the broader market sentiment also
Yeah.
being pretty weak at the time,
Mhm.
we just over the next month or so pulled back again back to like a $1.5 million market cap. And at the time, we weren't looking at charts. So, like a lot of us, we weren't having daily spaces anymore because coach was out. And so it was like, all right, well, then Nicole stepped up, who, by the way, Nicole was literally on a plane when the coach candle happens. So that was crazy. And then I remember Nicole saying, like, oh, like I'll step up and do spaces. Um, I had just taken on a new job. So it was crazy for me. I had two jobs rather than just my one full-time job.
Okay.
And Mung had also just taken on a new job. So it was like, it couldn't have been worse timing.
Mhm.
Um, but we all did what we could. It was like, all right, I'm going to handle this aspect of things. You're going to handle this aspect. And again, we delegated similarly to how we had done so back in the day when the dev rug happened. But this time it was like, we need a new focus. We need to come up with a more concrete narrative. And that was when we moved a little bit away from girl is cute
Sure.
and in favor of flipping the stock market.
Yeah.
And so we were like, we're not going to lose the girl is cute because that's like OG lore and it's kind of funny. But there were
Mhm.
people who were trying to sort of opportunistically like use that to try and like skew what we really represented. And so it was like, we got to move away from this. It was a protective and kind of like survival mechanism. And we were like, let's shift the narrative towards flipping the stock market. Let's redo the website. So the website used to be like kind of like an AI sort of Marie Rose where you could like talk to it and she would talk back to you. That was like the OG. It was the OG website after the dev rug. Well,
Gotcha.
after the coach candle, the new website looked more like kind of like it had that Wall Street kind of
Mhm.
vibe to it. It had like tickers running across the top and it had like news articles that related to like market analysis, but it was memetics. And so we kind of like rebranded a little bit more towards flipping the stock market. And I think that shift actually is the reason why this became a long-term thing. And to your point from earlier, we no longer became this funny, cute thing. We became this thing that actually served a deeper purpose of like, we're going to actually try and shift the paradigm. Why not? And in the words of like Nicole, it's a joke until it isn't.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
so,
Yeah, I think is it still the same that website? I mean, I think it still looks the same.
yes.
It's the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty. It's still it's a good one. I think I actually I mean I still appreciate the original website, but I think the one Mike made is I think Aeon6900.com. Have you seen that one?
I got to check that out. Is that with the Aeon builder?
No,
Oh,
it's one he made prior to that. It's got like it's really good to be honest. Like you should look at
okay.
it for
I
sure.
gotta I gotta check that one
Yeah,
out.
yeah. Aeons6900.com. Like it has at the bottom it shows the holders on ETH, Solana, and Base, which is cool. And then it's like it's got resource links to different things. It's good.
Yeah,
So
nice.
definitely take a look at that one. But
I will.
so
Yeah, we're so
I kind of think of that as the website now, honestly, because I whenever somebody asks me about it, I show them that one because it's got more resources and stuff.
Well, and that's the beauty of where we have found ourselves today, which is just that you have people like Mike and you have people like Undy and Chang, and people are developing like
Mhm.
amazing, amazing stuff. Whether it's websites that track where people live, like where different Aeons
The
are located.
Earth, yeah, the Earth one's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah, like there's so much amazing stuff being produced that it just like how the aim was sort of not to have that key man risk
yeah,
for the coach candle, we no longer even have a key website risk or
no,
and we shouldn't have it. This is really the embodiment of decentralized finance.
yeah, for
So
sure.
it's amazing.
Okay, I had two other shout outs. I was just curious if you've seen the Mosaic. Have you seen that website? The SPX Mosaic.
I think I maybe did. Who developed that one?
Aeon Reborn.
Oh yeah, Aeon Reborn is insane.
Yes.
I
Yes.
think I saw it, but I gotta look again.
So it's really cool. You can put your handle in, and then it adds your profile pic to it. And it's just like this big picture of profile pics. It's pretty
Yes.
cool. And then
Oh,
the other one that is I don't think it's talked about at all, and it's really cool. It's called girliscute.com.
mhm.
And the way it works is it looks like the Windows 98 like Bob to it. And then you
Yeah.
click the Cognosphere client, and then what happens is anytime anybody mentions SPX 1600 on X, it'll just come down. It looks like this command line console.
Yes.
It is. If you,
That one I saw.
that one's amazing.
That's one of my favorite websites.
I love that
Yeah.
one too. That's amazing. Like that's so
Thank you
cool.
for reminding me of the URL because that is one of my favorite ones.
Hmm.
And yeah, we need to get that out to people more.
Yeah, I love
And
like
also
I'll
Aeon
tweet something and
Reborn
look at it.
or
That
who?
who did that one? No, it wasn't Aeon Reborn. It was I can't remember. Damn. Yeah, I can reference it. I'll include that in the description. I can't remember.
Oh, cool, cool.
I'll send it to you. I'll find it. But
Yeah.
yeah, they're yeah, that's one of my most favorites too. It's just so cool. Is I'll like tweet it and I'll be looking at it. I'm like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah,
See
like did my
it.
tweet go through on this? Oh, that's sick.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is amazing. It is
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so yeah, there's just it's crazy the amount of development and things. So there's somebody made a wallet muncher is so you could say you have some dust on your wallet, you can click a button, it'll sell your dust for SPX. So that's
Nice.
pretty cool. I forget that one I haven't seen in a while, but it's pretty cool though.
Yes. Yeah, I
Um,
remember hearing
the other
about.
one that's really really big is flip the stock market dot
Yes,
xyz.
that one that one I know. That's the one that ranks all the market caps of the S&P 500
Yeah,
companies.
that one's really memed well.
That's an important one.
Yeah, I think it's cool. Like some do well, some don't. It just depends on how it is, and it's just cool to see people making stuff.
Yeah. You know, at some point, we got to just compile all of these. Like, I love what some of those flyers that are now out in the wild. I love that they link to like Murad's 1.5 hour thesis.
Yeah.
I like they link to the right content. R. Lenke has an amazing book that he has shared
Oh yeah.
out.
Hmm.
People just, even though it's like, like just in the initial stages, but that's publicly available. I think like a pamphlet that links to every single one of these things and has like an itemized description of what you're linking to is something we really need to work on. I'll work on that.
Yeah, I've seen
Having
some good work there, and then I've seen there's a website by Ready Steady Go called SPX 1600 resources.com, and
yeah.
it is really good at linking it out. I just don't. There's lots of websites, but yeah, the pamphlet I did is good. And then, oh yeah, so are you aware of the book by Audacious Investor? Have you seen that one? That one's
Hmm.
been out for a while now. That came out in June,
That's the one
actually.
that's actually in print, right?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Yes.
I
Yes.
actually thank you for saying that. I need to order one. I will do
Yes. Yes.
that.
That was actually the impetus to start the podcast actually because I didn't think it was getting a lot of
Wow.
traction. I
Yeah.
thought it was like he wrote a book,
Yeah.
and at first
How are we going to platform this? Yeah.
I was a little skeptical of it to be honest. You've seen like a lot of Amazon books that are kind of like trash AI stuff,
Yeah.
so I was afraid that's what it was going to be. Like I didn't know. I didn't know if it was like an opportunistic thing, but then I ordered it and read it, and I was like, okay, this is actually really good. So, and it's very different. Lanky is what he's doing is like more like historical, comparing it to money, like a very different. This is like generic, like this is what SPX is. This is like some basic tips if you're new to crypto.
Oh, cool.
it's a very different thing,
Yeah.
but it's cool though.
More like an onboarding tool kind of
Yes,
thing. Oh,
yes,
cool. Yeah, I'll
yes,
have to check that out for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. More like an onboarding tool for sure. But yep. So I, in my head, I kind of, or let me step back for a second. So, is it hard for you to believe because you were incredibly early where it is now compared to where it was? It's like is that kind of hard for you to fathom? Can you believe it's actually kind of worked?
Um, I'm more surprised as to like um my response to where it ended up rather than where it ended up. So like I'm not surprised at all that we're valued at what we're valued at.
Okay.
Um, I'm more amazed that that valuation has not changed my connection to the purpose in any way.
Hmm.
Um, and that just makes me way more bullish because I'm like, I know I'm experiencing this. I'm just like one person in the grand scheme of things. And I know other people are feeling that way too. Um, it's an interesting thing because I think many of us who got in early on, always knew it was capable of doing what it has done. Thankfully, Murad, who had the platform, came along and kind of put the spotlight on this thing that we had all
Yes.
collaboratively done together. And without it, like I would never ever negate the value of having someone like Murad actually shine a light on this. We are absolutely blessed to have him. Like
Oh yeah.
that was a game changer for us. It was like that thing that I think Idea Hazard had been waiting on. Maybe didn't come from the place that he even expected it to come from, but it came from where it needed to come from and at the exact time that it needed to. And I'm big on like time doesn't exist. I mean, it doesn't exist linearly the way we experience it, and we can't control the timeline of things. I think we always knew it would get here, and like many of us were committed to, we'll just do it until it's done, kind of. You talk to someone like Munchies, and these are people who like they see the world from a much more philosophical standpoint. Like it's more than what you see in the material realm. It's more than meets the eye, and we can analogize um, this sort of like uh, I don't know, aggregate of humans with a shared purpose to like an organism, like a microorganism or something, the way information is getting
Hmm.
dispersed and stuff. But anyway, like you talk to any one of these people who has like the utmost conviction, and it's like we understand the inevitability of things scaling when they like have meaning and purpose, and we were committed to, I think, participating in it until it played out. So I think I always knew it would get here, but I always thought that my response to this would be different, like, oh, but when it reaches this price I'm going to sell. I'm now at a point where I'm like, how do I never sell? uh, like I will come up with a way such that I never have to sell my SPX. And I know that I'm not the only one feeling that way. And so I think my response to it was like, oh, the money can change my life. But actually, it was the involvement and participation in something much greater than I am, much bigger than me. That was the thing that changed my life, not like my net value going up or something.
Yeah.
So I think I'm more shocked at my response to it because at like peak mania, if I had walked away from it, probably, I mean, if you look around, I'm sitting in my apartment right now. It is like the dinkiest apartment ever. I don't have a kitchen table. Like I live like the most minimal lifestyle ever. And like I could have things if I wanted to actually realize profits, but it's like, and I always thought that that was going to be the end game, but it
Hmm.
turned out that that was not the end game. And so, yeah, I'm much more surprised at how my own perception of the value of this to me has shifted.
Well, I think that's a moral response to a degree. I think, I mean, I understand if you sell some, like to to whatever to live off of or to do
Yeah.
something cool, that totally makes sense. But I think
Yeah.
that is a moral response. Like, oh, I'm not when he hits $3 or whatever the number is, I'm gonna dump everything. That's not,
Yeah.
that's not really cool. So
Yeah.
I think that's a good response. But I do understand too the hey, I'm going to sell at a certain price level. That makes sense. I mean, there's no reason to full stack out. I just don't understand that mindset. Like I'm going to sell everything at a
No.
certain. There's just no reason to do that. Like you may want to sell some to
Yeah.
improve your life or something, but yeah,
Hmm.
I think that's my mindset as well.
No, and I agree with you on the moral side of things. It's really why I became so bullish on SPX in particular. It's like from the get-go, I'm a big believer that the initial conditions of something really dictate the trajectory. And early on in SPX, the push towards like no lewd,
Yeah.
like
Hmm.
Marie Rose is going to be kind of like the mascot, and we'll even joke she's the dev, and this is a girl coin, and all this stuff. But it was like there was always a push to like fit the mimetics into these certain parameters that were kind of very protective parameters. Like you could have free speech, you could say basically whatever the hell you want, as long as it's not lewd. And like there were certain like very basic constraints. And at the beginning, the impact of that wasn't as clear. But because of those very minimal constraints, the people that SPX drew towards it, it magnetized in a way that really like sort of filtered out the people that we wouldn't want
Sure.
um,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be a part of this anyway. Um, and then and then the implications of that became if you're willing to participate in these very minimal and basic frameworks, you probably have a sense of frameworks beyond these. So, what I find interesting about SPX, or one of the things I find interesting about SPX, and I think Murad kind of alludes to this a lot in his thesis, is the sort of spiritual element where there are frameworks, right? Like it might be my moral frameworks might be slightly different from yours, which might be
Sure.
slightly different from Hype's, which, you know, like we all have our own moral frameworks we're coming into this with, but we have agreed to accept some basic moral frameworks.
Hmm.
Um, and I actually think that making those kind of known in writing and known in like when we're having conversations with each other or someone makes a meme and suddenly we're like you should delete that, that's a little too lewd or whatever. Like Mung refers to it as like our immune system, which I
Hmm.
love. But I think having those moral frameworks has kind of filled in this void that people have. I think society has moved away from organized religion,
Hmm.
um, largely. And unfortunately, organized religion has become conflated with morality.
Hmm.
And when you lose organized religion, you actually end up losing morality, even though those two things do not have to be a package deal.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so, what I think SPX has done for some people is remind them you
Yeah.
can create your own moral compass
Hmm.
and you can actually let that those moral frameworks be a guiding star for you. And morals, I'm using that term a little bit loosely because you can even generalize that to the no chart watching rule. You get what I'm saying? So like these, and I'm going to sort of zoom out from just morality and say like these ideological frameworks
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
we operate within. And so I'm super bullish on SPX for the reason that I know as a teacher that humans, when they are put into rigid structures, that is when they thrive the most. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I go to church personally.
yeah,
I was raised a Christian, and that's
yeah,
but I went through a process. I was raised a Christian. I went to college. I became an atheist. I was atheist for however long, 8 years or whatever it was. Came back
yeah,
because I realized it was making me a worse person personally.
yeah,
So then I came back to it. Now I'm a Christian now, but I'm much more. I was raised like what's the fundamentalist is what I would say, super like hardcore about it.
Yeah.
So that actually I think is what ultimately led me to leave, is because it was too close minded. But
Yeah.
now I have a much more like uh, realistic approach to it. So it's
Nice.
been a journey for me, but I definitely I think SPX has helped me be a better person too in a way. It's,
Yeah.
especially interacting with people and getting to know them. It's been cool.
It's just beautiful to hear about your kind of spiritual journey because I think probably many of us in SPX, Murad calls it kind of a high IQ coin community, which I believe is the case. And when you are high IQ and you're like living your life under this kind of magnifying glass where you're really inspecting, okay, these are the assumptions I've inherited, and challenging them and testing them. I think many of us have experienced probably a similar path to what you described, where like we're raised within an organized religion and those sort of spiritual frameworks. And then we remove ourselves from that to
Yeah.
really challenge like, is this something that resonates with me? And I think academia actually moves people towards atheism,
Hmm.
or at least moves people away from organized religion.
Yes.
And so I do imagine that a lot of us have gone on the same journey you have. I personally have gone on that journey, not to the extent of being atheist, but to the
Okay.
extent of playing with the concept of atheism.
Sure.
And um,
were you raised Christian or were you an
yeah,
organized
well,
religion?
yes,
I
yeah,
just out of curiosity.
I was raised Catholic.
Oh, okay.
I did go to like religious class once a week. I made my communion and my confirmation, but not like an overly religious family. We
Sure.
would sort of celebrate the traditional holidays and everything, but we wouldn't necessarily go to church on a weekly basis or
Sure.
anything like that. So it wasn't a central part of my upbringing, I would say. But I think getting my philosophy degree, one of the things that I noticed, and another one of the reasons that I really love SPX, is I noticed there was a narrative. And whether it was intentional or unintentional, I would not presume. Like I won't even go there because I don't, if it was malicious, I don't really want to know that maybe. But I always felt like
Wait.
Nietzsche,
Wait. What was the malicious? Well, I'm sorry, I missed that. What was
oh,
malicious? What was potentially malicious?
well, so the philosophers I would be taught about,
Okay. Okay.
in spite of who the professor was, it didn't matter who the professor was. They were always the philosophers that were nihilistic or there's
Right.
no inherent meaning in things, and I fundamentally disagree with that
Mhm.
because I have a very specific structure and you have a very distinctively different structure, and I think that that speaks to inherent meaning in that you have a different purpose than I have and you have different experiences that paint your ability to interact with your life that are different from mine. And so it never sat well with me. And
Sure.
the implications of believing that there's no inherent meaning are, I think, attributable a lot to the state of the world we're currently living in.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and I think attributable to that complacency that we discussed and people just becoming consumers because it's meaningless anyway, right? Like there is no higher purpose or there's, yeah. So anyway, so I loved getting my philosophy degree
Hmm.
because in a way it showed me, I felt, and I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist, well, a lot of it maybe, but I thought it showed whoever was like the powers that be that were creating the narrative we see on mainstream media and all this stuff. I felt like it showed their hand because I think with universities, we get prescribed our authorities. And it's
Hmm.
like, okay, someone comes out of Harvard or someone comes out of any one of these Ivy Leagues, and you become very passive because you're like, oh, well, they're an authority. Like, and they, there's this sort of like it's a social stratum. Like they have mental or intellectual authority over me because of this branding. And suddenly I become very passive and I accept what they say at face value because who am I to argue with it? And so I think the universities are kind of like the training grounds in
Mm-hmm.
a sense. And so to me, the philosophers I was being fed and the materials I was being given to consume were symbolic of something. It was symbolic of a direction, a trajectory that humanity was being sort of nudged in. And perhaps it wasn't, perhaps it was just a symbol of the ideologies that were inherited by my professors. And it was maybe just something that was more of a muscle memory thing. But if there was an agenda behind it, the implications of it were problematic to me. And so when I saw SPX and when I'm talking to Idea Hazard, we're talking about Hegel, who is kind of this like absolute idealist, and there is inherent meaning in things.
Mm-hmm.
Um and and even just like there's this thing by Hegel that's called the Lectures on Aesthetics, which I highly recommend if anyone's watching this. Um, and Hegel basically says nature is inherently beautiful, but artwork elevates nature to the realm of ideals. And when we create something, looking at nature, right, we can see a tree, and that tree has its sort of imperfections, right? But it's inherently beautiful. But we can then create a painting of that tree, and our painting can elevate that tree to the realm of perfection. Whatever our ideals tell us would make that tree more perfect. And we can paint it such that we have now elevated nature to the realm of ideals. And in doing that, it actually brings us closer to God. And what I see happening with SPX is exactly that. We are creating these frameworks, these ideological frameworks, and we are elevating nature, human nature, to the realm of ideals. And that's why I'm bullish on SPX. That's really like on a deeper level what I think we're doing here.
Interesting. I've I've been thinking about it a bit more too. Have you heard of the concept of the monad?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
so that's been something I've been exploring a bit.
Oh,
There's
that's
actually
so cool. Are you
there
looking through the lens of like Leibniz or
I've just started, and really it's been from a YouTube lecture.
cool?
I don't know. It's a Chinese professor. I can't remember his
Yeah,
name.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Okay, so cool.
yeah. So I haven't like gone super deep into it, but just the hour and a half lecture on it or whatever it was
Yeah.
is as gave me some insights. It kind of puts a meta to religion in a sense,
Yes.
which I think is cool because it's like the closer, because like I think the idea, the concept of the monad is like it is essentially God, kind of,
Yes.
or
That's
the
right.
yeah,
Mhm.
essentially God, but kind of even more abstract in a way. And so Christianity can bring you closer to the monad. That's in my head, but I think SPX 6900 actually does in a sense because it gives you those same, you know,
Totally.
yeah.
I think with the concept of the monad, there's like this element of self-similarity where we are sort of fractal gods. Like we
Mm-hmm.
are like microscopic manifestations of God, the
Yeah.
one substance. So yeah, so
Yeah. And
cool.
that would be like in Christianity, would be like the children of God would be the way to think of it.
That's right.
But
That's right.
yeah, and a lot of this, it just so happens, you know, SPX has those cool names that would kind of relate to Aeons, you know, being angels and that sort of thing. So it's
Hmm.
got a lot of the same. It's cool that it's got that symbology that would help
That's
support that
right.
idea.
That's right.
Yeah. I'll post a link to the to that lecture from that guy. It's really cool.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll have to
Yes,
check that out.
yes,
That's right up my alley.
yes. You know, he's really interesting. I can't remember his. I actually have. I do know. I kind of know his name. I just can't pronounce it.
That's
It's
fair.
hard to pronounce. So it's. But yeah, and he's got a really cool. He's got. He also does geopolitical talk. Like it's very
Oh,
interesting, dude. Um. Okay, where was that? Oh yeah. So So yeah, just to wrap this part, is I was going to get into this at some point, but I noticed you had a post about intelligent design. What is that to you?
Say,
Like
uh,
basically, the post said it said like um, I think it kind of goes along with what you're saying. Like people in college and that sort of thing try to make it to where it's just we come about from matter essentially, and there's no like purpose behind it. At least that's what I read. So
yeah.
how is intelligent design to you just like God did it, or like how do you
It,
think it?
it's interesting because my perspective changes, I feel like, on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I tend to think um, like form defines function to some extent, but for some reason, your cells undifferentiated, some of them knew to be kidneys, and some of them knew to be a liver, and some of them knew to be lungs, and some of them knew to be your fingernails. And to me, that knowledge of like, what role do I need to fill? And what roles are out there for me to fill is just a matter of this interplay between fate and free will. And I think that on a need basis, anything can determine its own purpose. And so if I am an undifferentiated cell and I know that there's been damage to a certain tissue, I can fill that void. And if I know that there's been damage to the sort of socioeconomic structure, I can choose to fill that void or to patch that. Um, or if I don't take a proactive role in my life, then I think fate will dominate. And that fate is more a circumstantial allowing of those that are exhibiting their free will to sort of make their choices sort of preliminary. And then everything else gets patched with the passive aspects. I don't know. That's probably the most concise way that I could describe it. I think that everything has a purpose, but I think that that purpose is not always deterministic. I think that sometimes we are able to be the sort of creators of our own destiny. But if we don't choose to, I believe there is intelligent design that can step in and say, these are the places where things are needed. And if you're a chemist or like a material science engineer, you probably look at it as what's the lowest energetic state that needs to be occupied or something like this,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm,
Where
mm-hmm.
like this is the path of least resistance. So the thing will just become that because that's the easiest thing for it to become based on the initial conditions or whatever.
Right.
So it could just be like a mechanical sort of necessitated thing. But I think we do have the free will to say, you know what, I'm gonna fundamentally change my attention from this thing to this other thing. And my purpose is going to shift in favor of something fundamentally different. And I think we're capable of doing that. The one thing I don't think we have control over is time,
Yeah.
because I don't think time exists.
Okay.
And so I think if people can remove time from the equation, all we have left are dependencies of like one variable influencing another variable. Like when we look at a dynamical situation, we look at the way variables change with respect to time, how they evolve with respect to time. But the common denominator being time, once you remove that, they're just changing with respect to each other.
Yeah, it's true.
So that's the best way I can simplify.
That's an interesting way to think about it. I kind of I kind of think about it. It's like, did matter create mind, or did mind create matter?
Right.
And I just think I think there was a mind that created matter, and then
Yeah.
that's just how I
Yeah.
really
I
that's my simplest way to put it for me.
I agree with you. I think in the initial state of things. But when I say initial, now I'm reverting back to my assumption that time exists. So, so it's a little bit of a problem.
Maybe maybe time exists and it doesn't at the same time. I don't know.
Maybe,
I don't
absolutely.
know. Maybe it's like maybe it just depends on your reference.
Right,
But
right.
yeah, who knows? But yeah. Okay, I'm gonna shift gears again. I definitely want to talk about this stuff, so I'm glad we got to it. So I kind of put the movement into two different pivotal spots: pre-Murad, post-Murad. I mean, at this point, that's how I kind of divide it up because it's
Absolutely.
so. Did you play a role in getting him involved? I know just being a part of it helped, I'm sure, but did you play a bigger role than that?
I would say the answer is no. But I would say that Murad, we had noticed, especially after the coach candle, and we weren't paying as close of attention before. So, but I actually think he took interest shortly after that.
Interesting.
And so I think he was coming into spaces as an anonymous listener, which we noticed like there was often an anonymous listener. And it would be at the most obscure times. So anyway, so I think that, and he has reaffirmed that he was sort of lurking in our spaces, lurking in the Telegram for many, many months before he initially started to buy in. And he'll say like he was looking at the way that we sort of moved. And I think that the only role that I potentially played was just doing the things that I naturally was doing, which was I was still showing up daily on the timeline.
Hmm.
I was going in person. I started going to these conferences and shilling to people in
Yeah.
person. And so I think that I didn't have an explicit role at all, but I think it was potentially a contributing factor to see that unconditionally we were still going to show up. And in fact, we weren't just going to show up, but we were going to start to try different things and see if we could scale it by going to IRL conferences. And if we could, just like at that time, which a lot of people probably don't know, I had started probably I'll say March, right? It was ETH Denver. So it would have been end of February into the beginning of March. Um, I had started going in person. I had gone to ETH Denver and chilled. We were at like a local bottom of like $1.5 million market cap. And I was like, I think this can be saved. So I kind of just took it upon myself. I printed the stickers that everyone has now seen, which had Baprol's quote at the top,
Mm.
stop trading, believe in something, had my Aeon with the pink pigtails and had SPX 6900. And I'm going up to people at ETH Denver and I'm like, listen, we're at a local bottom. I want to show you our website. And back at the time, it was still the Schizo website, not the new
Yes.
one.
Yes.
And I'm showing people, and they're like dying laughing, and they're market buying like hundreds of thousands of dollars on the spot because some other coins had just run. And so some people were rotating into us. Um, and so I'm shilling in person. But what I had realized at that conference was if we are to get eventually centralized exchange listings, we're going to need a market maker.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it was at that time that I was starting to try and make contacts with anyone and everyone so that I could start meeting with people and understanding different operational things, different like types of contracts you could get into, and basically trying to put all the pieces in place so that if and when we decided listings would happen, I would already have done all of the preliminary work for it. And so what I had noticed at the time, which was totally psychotic, after ETH Denver, I made a I made the most ridiculous spreadsheet ever. I was scraping data. I programmed it to scrape data from Etherscan.
Okay.
I was watching some of the bigger wallets. I was watching some of the whale movement.
Hmm.
Um, so this, I mean, people might shame me, but I was literally doing this. No longer, but anyway. And in another one of the tabs, I had aggregated data from all of the meme coins that were very interesting to me in terms of their price action. And the data I had aggregated was like, what's their market cap before and after a listing on each one of these exchanges? What's Ethereum doing? What's Bitcoin doing? Who's their market maker? Like I had this insane spreadsheet. And then when I had met with some of the market makers and they found out that I had done this, they're just like, you're crazy. But I was getting data. And what I learned from that data was that the macro was really, really important. And it was not yet time for us to get listings. And so it was kind of like, okay, let's get all the pieces in place and let's wait. The market was in a lull. Let's wait until there's momentum. And because time is a flat circle with these things, I figured probably it was going to be the fall. And it actually timed out kind of nicely because Murad, when he called us, it was the second week of September. I had everything ready to go. So, like, I had already gotten contracts from some of the exchanges. I had already met with all the market makers
Wow.
and had their deals that they presented us with. And it was just a matter of really like flipping the switch and saying, it's go time. And so that became the market was going to be the catalyst. It was like, okay, we're going to like wait for macro to look a lot better. But then when Murad called us, it felt like, well, he's front running the macro, right? Like
Yeah.
things are going to get interesting very, very soon. So it's probably time to do this. Like let's let this be the catalyst then.
Hmm.
And so it just worked out that without having any connection at all to Murad sort of being onboarded beyond just doing what I had always done, I had already been preparing in case there was some sort of a
Sure.
catalyst, which I thought was going to be the macro, but turned out it was going to be Murad calling us as the number one meme coin. So I would say that was a really long-winded answer to the question of did I play a role? No, I did not directly play a role, but I think Murad took interest in the same things the OGs took interest in.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think other communities think there's like some big plan that he had. Like,
Yeah.
oh, we're gonna get them into it, and then I'm gonna throw them with this one. Just like I guess they think it was like I don't know. They think like it was his coin that there was no real reason behind it. It was just like this is my number one coin. Screw all you other guys. That's kind of I think the perspective of some people. But in reality is this was the number one coin for a reason.
And what I will say to that is it's not anyone who has this perception of him, it's not their fault, right? Because all of these influencers are so malicious and like
Yeah.
no one has ever encountered like a benevolent sort of influencer. And
Yep.
like not he's really not a self-proclaimed influencer. He just has a platform and
I mean, he is a coal, like by
yeah.
technical definition, but he's not. He just doesn't act the same way.
Yeah, right. And so I do understand people having like that hesitancy, but I think also if you like have conversation with him, you understand he's really, really interested in metrics. Like his one of his passions is literally developing metrics. And so if that's something you're passionate about, you are creating metrics to understand dynamical systems that don't make sense. And SPX is totally anomalous and it really doesn't make sense. And so it's kind of an interesting case study for someone like Murad, who is passionate about creating metrics that help better predict things that are anomalous. Um, so
Yeah.
anyway, I can see why he took interest because um, you don't find anything interesting out if you just study the things that move the way things normally move. Like the interesting dynamics happen in the anomalies and the outliers, and SPX is an outlier.
Yep. Exactly. Um. So going from when I interviewed Murad for, I believe it was the second time, he mentioned, or the first time I can't remember, but he mentioned that you do a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and I'm kind of getting a better picture for that now.
Yeah.
And he said, like, I asked, like, who do you appreciate the most? I think was the question. He's like, he mentioned you because of a lot of this work. So, can you comment? I guess, are there any other cool things that you could reveal that you're working on?
Well, first of all, I someone had pointed me to that episode of your show, and I like literally started crying
Oh my god.
because it really it really means something. Like we don't, none of us who have been in this since the beginning do it for any kind of recognition. We
Hmm.
just genuinely love this project and we believe in it. And I'll just say before I answer your question, like that is a totally mutual sentiment. There is such a level of mutual respect. And like, I think maybe when Murad first like vocally, like you could almost say came out the closet as an SPX holder,
Yeah.
I think like we didn't know each other yet, and maybe it took some time for him to sort of figure out what role I had, because we all just sort of like put ourselves into roles, because there is no sort of like foundation, right? Which like people get nervous about, but actually that's been our blessing. Um, so, you know, I think as he came to see how I work on things, and came to be involved, because the beautiful thing about Murad is like he doesn't just rely on his platform, like he really works for his bags.
Hmm.
And he's like anything I can do to help, da, da, da. Like, you know, just really willing, even though I'm like the one person that's like, I'm never gonna offload anything that I consider to be my own responsibility, even if it's like a self-designated responsibility. I'm never gonna offload work. But yeah, it's been really nice to have other people with similar work ethic and passion, and competency, who are as participatory as Murad is. So I'm absolutely indebted and grateful to him. And in terms of just some things that are going on behind the scenes, there is something really exciting that been working on with a couple of other people. I really, really can't talk about what it is, but I
Okay.
would really love to. But I think like it won't necessarily be all that long before like we can actually start talking about it.
Do you think
Um,
before the end of the year or after?
I don't want to give a time for. I'm a little superstitious, so I don't want to
Okay.
give a time for.
Okay. I'm just. Yeah. Okay.
But I'll say what I will. The time frame I'll give you is that it's something that's been in the works for a while now.
Okay.
So it's not like it's in early stages of development or anything like that. And I think it's like the next evolution. It's one of the things that I would consider to be the next evolution. Um,
Cool.
and as for just things behind the scenes that I've like played roles in, like I was mentioning before, a lot of the sort of exchange listings, the market maker
Sure.
deals, just like dealing more with some of the institutions and like um, finding out what is of interest to them and like how they can get better access to something without maybe like I think one of the places where GameStop fell short
Hmm.
was that you had retail versus the institutions.
That's true.
And I think there might be a world, and I think Bitcoin, like BTC,
Hmm.
it's kind of a testament to the fact that sometimes retail and institutions can actually be synergistic,
Hmm.
or can both like share in a mission, even if their underlying reason for doing so fundamentally differs. So anyway, I've been really messing around with that concept because I've gone to a couple of conferences and I've gone to a couple of sort of like private events with some of these institutions, and I'll talk to people who have small funds or whatever. And they love SPX, but they're like, man, like I wish we could have access to it, but like
Hmm.
it's too volatile and we actually aren't allowed to have direct exposure. So that's an interesting point that I think is becoming a more prevalent theme within the crypto space, is like how that we're talking about meme coin super cycle all the time, but like these institutions actually getting access is a whole different ball game. And so it's one of the things that I've kind of observed in some of my behind the scenes activity as being, maybe I don't want to call it a point of contention, but it's a point of like friction. And back to one of the earlier points I made in our talk today is just like getting people frictionless exposure
Yeah.
to the S&P 6900 is a priority. It's something that like, if I could define what my role is, it's one of my roles.
Nice. Okay.
So yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. That's kind of what I was thinking. So that's cool. What we recently got the Coinbase listing. Just speaking of exchanges and stuff.
Yeah,
What are I know we're not on Robinhood,
that's right.
and
We don't have,
are we on Binance proper yet?
we are only on Binance
Okay,
US
that's what I thought. Okay.
but we only have perps on like actual Binance Global. Yeah.
Is that something that you're working on, or is that something that has been thought about to try to get on Binance proper or Robinhood? I'm just curious.
It's definitely like to the point of frictionless exposure. I would rather us have spot listings there instead of perps.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the goal would be to get spot on any and every platform, I would say. And with that being said, I will always follow up and say, like, take your coins off.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, like be your own bank, just like with the GameStop saga, direct register your shares, own your own tokens,
Yes.
all of that good stuff. But yeah, I definitely would love to see us on there. Am I working towards it? Yes, but like don't always have like control over the outcome or at least the timing of things. But that would be a goal. There are some things behind the scenes that I deal with that um, are more to like a regulatory point, where like there are different regulatory frameworks in the US versus in the EU. And like, so there are sometimes
Yeah.
different things that need to be done with compliance that no one else is going to want to do that crap. So I end
Yeah.
up doing that stuff. And like, so some of these exchanges, one of the barriers of entry could be compliance related stuff. So,
That's awesome. Well, that's good to know. I think the Coinbase listing has been really great for helping people onboard, like
oh,
kind of
totally.
regular people.
Mhm.
Kraken's great too. But
Yes. Yeah. And their fees are super low. We love Kraken.
yeah, Kraken's the if you're going to buy on a centralized exchange, I think it's I don't that's my favorite at least.
Yeah. I
Coinbase is
totally
great because it has that user base, and then that would be Robinhood would be great as well because of that. But yeah, it is excellent that we're on Coinbase, so it's awesome.
totally agree.
Um, so where do you see SPX going in the future? When I say future, I mean where do you see it and say let's say by 2030? Or can you even imagine it? What do you think?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I
Okay,
think
I want to
it's
hear
all
about
the
that.
time.
I want to hear it then.
My coworkers, so I'm a teacher, and my coworkers put their retirement funds into the S&P 500.
Okay.
And so in 2030, so I want between now and then, I want us to get to a point of people being less passive about where they invest their retirement funds and to realize what they are passively investing in. R. Lanke captures it really, really well in his book. And he captures a couple of the sectors. I would even expand beyond it to say S&P 500 has BP. You could think of the oil spill and the implications of that. You could think of the weapon development, which he mentions in his book, which is laser driven bombs and like the missiles and all this stuff and the algorithms that steer these things. All of the companies that are encompassed by the S&P 500, or I shouldn't say all, but very many of the companies that are encompassed by the S&P 500 are fundamentally anti-human and anti proliferation of civilization. And I would love to see a world in which, in the year 2030, my coworkers are not passively investing in something that I would consider to be potentially a death cult, but instead having the opportunity to put their retirement funds into something like the S&P 6900. So
That's awesome.
I think, like, to me, retirement funds are kind of end game
Mm-hmm.
because there's so little. It's like you don't even really know what your funds are being invested in a lot of the time. It's just kind of being done by this middleman. And I would love to see people get away from being so passive about where they put their money, their energy, because I think that's all a vote in favor of the future. And
Right.
sometimes that vote is in favor of a worse future. But I think that in a perfect world, that vote will be in favor of a better, more equitable, more harmonious future.
Yeah, it sounds like you're laser focused on getting capital in, which I think is good, and
Yeah.
with your exchanges and all that stuff, and what you
Yeah.
said for the future. I guess to follow up, where do you think specifically the community will be? The people who were really into it.
In a perfect world, the community has some sort of a compound and we are collaborating. No, I really mean, I know it sounds insane, right? But like, the concept of a network state or
Hmm.
something, but actually being in proximity with each other, living off the land, having more of like a barter kind of system. I think we have the developers that are capable of doing it, building out apps where we can just use SPX as the currency.
Hmm. Hmm.
Everyone fills their little sort of void and makes their contribution. And yeah, I would love to see us actually organize on a physical level.
Yeah, I think that will definitely. I mean, it's already. I mean, we're at the beginning stages of that, but
I agree.
it's
Yeah,
already happening.
I totally agree.
But yeah, I'm interested. I mean, and if we're right about where it goes, that's going to be a huge wealth creation event for a lot of people. So it'll be
Exactly.
interesting to see what people do with it.
Yep, exactly.
Yep, yep. That'll be cool. Okay, do you actually believe that the SPX 6900 will flip the stock market? Truly?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I do because I know I won't stop ever. And I know Baproll won't stop ever. And I know Murad won't stop ever. And I don't think you're stopping anytime soon. And I don't think Mike Flip the Stock Market is stopping anytime soon. If Hype continues putting out these banger videos, and if Undy continues putting out banger videos, and he's newer to it, but I think he's starting to create some incredible content. If people continue creating media surrounding what we are actually doing and people become in the know about what's happening, because right now we're still a little bit within our own echo chamber, but I think we're working towards breaking
Mm-hmm.
out of it. So if we've accomplished what we've already accomplished just within our little echo chamber, then the moment that we sort of pierce through, um,
Pierce the
like,
veil, so to speak.
yeah, you know what I mean? Because it's like right now, the world is governed by media. And in a way, what needs to happen is the media we are consuming has to be diluted with our own creation, not just what we're being fed, but there needs to be a better balance between SPX related content and this notion of how to flip the stock market. Like, what are the steps, like, not only onboarding people into the community, but what are the steps we can take in order to achieve that? And I think once we scale the media, then it's a done deal.
Yeah, I
And I
love
think
that.
we're
Yeah.
working towards it. I think we need newspapers. I think we need, like I love what Murad is working towards with like the whole, okay, move to TikTok. Okay, move to Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that, but I think it's bigger than digital narratives. I think we need like newspapers at every newsstand, and we need like magazines, and we need TV shows, and we need like I don't want to do a movie. I don't think we should do a movie because I actually blame the GameStop saga falling short because I think the documentary came out before the thing was over. And
Yeah.
so I don't want us to run our victory laps too early, but we
No.
need to be putting out regular content. Like a newspaper is a regular publication. A magazine is a regular publication. We need to be creating media on a regular cadence that infiltrates the day-to-day existence of people. And maybe they only buy the newspaper because it's got the crossword puzzle on the back. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
people buy the New York Times so they could do the New York Times crossword puzzle. We need to actualize, like we need to sort of leverage that strategy of how can we get people to do something as just like a way of passing time, but then all of a sudden they're getting exposure to what we're actually doing.
Hmm.
And we need to sort of pair these things
I
together.
think one
Yeah.
of the most it actually came out quite a while ago, but somebody made a comic book, which I
Mm-hmm.
thought was pretty cool. That was like
That's a great idea.
kind of what you were saying. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's a fun comic book, but then it's got these some of our Mimetic what are, core principles in there. So
Okay.
that's kind of what you're saying. And then
Yeah.
yeah, I think that'll happen over time. I'm focused on I to Murad's point with the digital, it just scales so much better, so much easier.
It's true. Right. And I agree that it's preliminary to the other stuff.
Yeah.
And so I 100%, if I had like all the free time in the world, I'd be the most psychotic Reddit like raider ever. Because I was back in the Wall Street best days because it timed out with the pandemic. And I think largely the reason that the GameStop movement reached critical mass the way it did was people were home. Like
Yeah, yeah,
they were
definitely.
home, they were lonely, they were looking for a sense of belonging. And like right now, a lot of us are trying to sort of resolve our need to be fully involved in this with like IRL jobs and stuff. And
Hmm.
so I think like it might just take a little bit longer, but I 100% think that we're going to flip the S&P 500's market cap. I have no doubt about it.
That's awesome to hear. I think I asked Hype the same question. He's like, no, it's read between the lines. But he was still extremely bullish, but he didn't literally believe it. And I was like, I don't literally believe it, to be honest with you. I think my belief grows every day, if that makes sense. It's like a goal to get to that level of belief.
And that was just going to be my response to you is you don't think so now, but you'll get there.
Yeah.
Because I think when I started, I probably was like, oh, this is more just symbolic.
Like a joke is funny, it's like a goal or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, but I fully believe it. I've met a couple people who are kind of OGs in SPX, and I won't even say who, but a couple of like the core people I've actually met in person. And in having met them, it became very clear to me that this is going to happen.
Wow, that's amazing to hear. Yeah, I think
So,
some of us don't have that, and so that's
yeah,
it's good to
yeah,
hear that sort of
yeah,
thing. But I know there's a lot of new people who do literally believe it, and that's what I was trying to explain to Hype. I'm like, there's people that
yeah,
really believe it. I mean, so you do have some kind of responsibility in a sense. Like if people believe it, you got to start living it, sort of thing.
yeah.
Mm. So yeah, that's cool to hear. Okay, just a few more points. You're clearly highly intelligent and you're super involved. I think there's other really intelligent people as well. So, what do you say to the naysayers that SPX is delusional nonsense?
So I think this kind of ties back into something we were talking about a little bit earlier. And that is the power of memetics, but understanding that this is not memetics on a superficial level, but this is memetics on like an emotional and even an intellectual level, because most people in academia can agree that there are fundamental flaws with the sort of economics and like the financial structure of the world. Whether you look at it from a standpoint of the narrative being driven by the corporations that are able to sort of fund the media that we're seeing. Like, in other words, you'll always see a commercial from certain pharmaceutical
Yeah.
corporations on whatever drug they're trying to push. And that's like, it's the way that the way I want to sort of frame that is like basically Mindshare, similar to Mimetics, right? Like, they're occupying a lot of your mind share where you're going to go away from the TV. And even if you're not watching the commercial, you might hear the commercial in your head. It'll repeat through the day. It's kind of catchy. And so it's like in a war on mind share, there are corporations that have sort of like more material incentives. And these material incentives kind of outweigh any notion of like what is for the greater good of humanity, right? Like, I might publish a research article that supports the efficacy of a therapeutic, and I might want to exaggerate my findings. So instead of comparing it to another drug that does the same thing, I might compare it to no drug. Or I might omit some of the data. You know, I can mess around with the temporal resolution of the data to make the results seem skewed in a certain direction, right? And if I'm someone in academia, I'm going to read that article and say, this was published in a journal that is really highly regarded. So I believe that this drug is effective. And if I'm a doctor, I might then go ahead and prescribe it and so on. But if I look just a little bit deeper and I look at the acknowledgement section, suddenly I notice that the grant that funded this study came from the pharmaceutical corporation, which is not always the case, but sometimes is the case. And so I think on a deeper level, if like it's just a war on our like mind share, there are forces that are trying to sort of predominate the mind share for financial ends, right? For being able to profit off of their product. And what SPX does is it is kind of a vampire attack on mind share, but for the greater good. And the moment that people see that distinction between like someone wants your attention, there are people who want your attention who want to use you and turn you into a consumer. And then there are other people who want your attention because they want you to live a more proactive existence and to become more of a producer and to contribute to the advancement of civilization. Which one of those are you more interested in buying into? Because your money is your vote, your energy is your vote, and which one of those are you going to be more inclined to participate in? Most people in academia actually want the betterment of humanity and want the advancement of civilization. However, they have inherited certain structures of like, this is a designated authority, right? This is like your authoritative figure. And are a little bit afraid of being pigeonholed into a category of like, if you don't fall in line with these structures, suddenly you're a conspiracy theorist. And if you know the history of terminology, the CIA leveraged that back in the civil rights movement to stop people from looking at certain things. And so I think like for the people who are not believers, there are a couple levels of it. The first level of it is it's just a matter of mind share. And when people realize that things are fundamentally wrong, they want to enact a correction. And it is like an instinctual thing. And it's a survival mechanism to want to correct it. And once that narrative scales, and that narrative has not scaled yet, the only narrative right now is flip the stock market. But when that narrative scales, that's going to ignite a whole other, like, you want to call this a movement coin? People haven't seen movement coin yet. When that narrative reaches like more mainstream awareness, this thing is really going to scale. Because sometimes people participate in these structures without realizing the implications of what they're participating in. And so this is going to be a long process of having people like Munchies, who's a doctor, having our friend who's a surgeon. I
Oh
forget.
God, I love him, Jesse.
Jesse. Yeah, 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 yeah. Like,
I'm having him on Monday. Oh,
that's awesome. I love that guy. But we are going to need people like this who are in those roles of
yeah,
like, you are the assigned authorities. We need people like Murad who came from Ivies,
yeah,
who need to shine the light on this, because if you and I shine the light on this, we come to it from a very sort of human perspective. But they kind of bridge the gap between academia and like your sort of um, I'm going to say you're assigned regular human, because
yeah,
I don't necessarily think there's really any difference there, but we've been told there is a difference. And so people see you and I maybe different from someone just like who has that platform or that branding.
yeah. The professional, whatever. The
Yeah. But we need those professionals to bridge that gap.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
those us as experts or whatever the people in authority, I guess, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. But so to the naysayers, it's like the actual narrative, like the real underlying philosophical depth to this has not even really clicked with people yet. And when it does, that's the community it's going to click with. It's going to click with academia. And once academia embraces it, there's no stopping it.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of crazy. It's I think it's hard for people to imagine at this point. I mean, it
Yeah.
is even for me. So it's I know it's cool. I always say when somebody asks me like, "How well do you think it's going to do?" I was like, "I don't know for sure, but I know it's going to do well. I don't know the time frame, but I know it will do well."
Yeah.
That's what I always say.
Well,
So
I actually recently, my sister got her PhD at Harvard. She's a biochemist. She has been invited to run labs literally at Princeton, Yale, like Columbia, UPenn, like every Ivy League, you name it, they all wanted her. But anyway, she is like a leading biochemist. She is basically the creator of the field of metabolomics and
interesting. Wow.
understanding how mitochondria actually function. So anyway, so she recently had like a party for my baby nephew, and
Cool.
her former housemates, who were all PhD scientists from Harvard,
Yeah.
are at this thing, and I'm shilling SPX. They're like, we heard all about SPX. Like, we don't know anything. Talk to us like we are like 5 years old.
Sure. Sure.
Like, like really dumb it down for us. Help us understand what's going on. And when I did, I really used that sort of like mimetics can just be funny or they can just be aesthetic, but they also can have like a deeper undertone that's actually spiritual or philosophical. And SPX has that. And SPX taps into that inner knowing that we all have, that there are humans suffering because of the way things currently are. And everyone, if you feel any level of empathy, wants to correct that.
Mm,
Um, and when it was framed that way, and when I started talking about some of the companies that are in the S&P 500, and like Murad always talks about the loneliness element, the reproductive success is like on a decline, and AI is coming for our jobs, and like there's going to be this identity crisis. And when you frame it that way, and when you actually connect all of those aspects to things that are happening as a result of companies in the S&P 500, it clicks for people, and their eyes lit up. They're like, how can I get access to this thing? Like immediately, like they're like, what is the quickest way that we can get onboarded?
yeah.
Um, and so that was really reassuring. I really do think academia is going to be a big turning point for us. Like once we break into that realm, that's going to be huge.
Yeah. I know. I noticed we have a lot of like highly intelligent. Like, I don't, have you seen Ilya? Ilya.
Yeah, yes. Ilya is
He's like a
awesome.
neuroscientist or
Yeah,
something,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
Yeah,
a
I love Ilya.
and Aeon Reborn is like a giga brain too. When I spoke
Yeah.
to him, I was
There,
like,
yeah.
uh, So
And Undy too is an amazing programmer. Like
yeah,
they're
yeah, I forgot about that. So he makes incredible music too. I really love his
yes,
music.
yeah, yeah.
Like it's really good, actually. I listen to it not just because I like it. It's good.
Yeah, it
If
is.
you like electronic music, it's great. What's
Yeah,
interesting about Undy is he originally was in a is into black metal. I don't know if you knew
yeah.
that. Yeah, like so like black metal music is the total opposite of what he creates now. Just
That's pretty funny. I didn't have that added context, but just based on like his personality, it makes sense a little bit.
like
He's
this
like super intense. He's a really intense person.
yeah, he really yeah. That's what I've learned too, for sure.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, just a couple more things. I want to shift gears one more time. So, how do you see the Aeon NFTs fitting into the broader context of the movement?
I think the nice thing about the Aeon NFTs is that in a very unspoken way, it defines what our aesthetic is. And so we're like any company that has scaled really well, they usually have like a brand kit or like
Yeah.
these are the fonts that we use, these are the colors we use, this is the style, kind of like a style guide. Like any asset you make should follow within these parameters. And I think what Aeon, the NFT collection does is it kind of is our like style guide
Mm.
in a very like abstract and unspoken way. But it's also our style guide in the sense that like I brought up Hegel. Actually, little bit of lore is Idea Hazard, I think included the Hegel trait. Or told Denko. Denko is the artist behind the Project Aeon NFT collection. I'm
Okay.
pretty sure that Idea Hazard had the Hegel trait incorporated because we had had the conversation about how we both like that's one of our favorite philosophers. So in a way, it's even a style guide in terms of like you don't have to be nihilistic, right? Like you can actually believe that there is inherent meaning in the world. And that there is a greater purpose to all of this. And so I like that aspect of the Project Aeon collection. I also love that it is just the visual indicator that you are someone who believes in SPX 6900. And so put a girl on becoming
Hmm.
like something that we say to people, like, especially, I remember before we had the Coinbase listing, everyone was telling like some of the guys from Coinbase put a girl on or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so it's kind of cool. And I think it's a good kind of like way of contrasting. If you could visualize what the stock market used to look like in the days of S&P 500 being like, I think when we do flip the stock market, because as I've mentioned to you before, I do believe we will, just like how you currently dichotomize SPX as like pre-Murad, post-Murad,
Hmm.
I believe we will have pre-stock market flipping and post.
And
And
then there'll
I
be other steps in between there too. Yeah,
totally,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
totally.
yeah. But go ahead. Sorry.
But I think that if you could picture before the stock market flipping and after, the before is like middle-aged men, and the after feels like if you could visually contrast it, it's got to be like girls, right? Cute girls flipping the stock market, which is where that kind of like mimetics came from.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's like the visual contrast of like you are you going to shift the paradigm if everything looks the same? And this was one of my sort of points of contention with some of the meme videos that happened in the in between, like the coach candle happened, and then all of a sudden when we shifted the narrative to flip the stock market, all of a sudden everything looked like the old stock market, and I'm like, are we really going to shift the paradigm if it just looks the same as it did before?
Yeah.
um, so for me, we need to, with the media that we create, actually visualize in a different way what the stock market looks like. And I think like that is going to be a collaborative thing that thankfully we will have great minds like Ilya and Munchies and some of these high IQ Aeons to help conceive of what does the new stock market look like when we get there. What does it look like? And how do we ensure that it is pro advancement of civilization and not anti advancement of civilization?
Yeah, I think some of those memes are just trying to be like ironic, like
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
like
Definitely.
I did one of the first like set of memes I made was I just did like Warren Buffett looking kind of goofy, like and then like a quote from him, but I would change it to make it SPX related,
Yes.
like like
That's great.
like during the AI, you remember the AI bubble thing? I was like, why buy an AI shitter when you can buy this? And it was like a play on one of his quotes. And I did a
Yeah.
lot of stuff like that.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
Well,
but
trust me, using Warren Buffett, using like Charlie Munger, like these are critical figures to include in the content. I
God, it's
love
so
it.
funny.
Very
Those are like some of
creative.
my favorite.
Yeah. No, I
And
love that stuff.
now, whenever I do, I don't create as many memes as I did like flat picture memes. But whenever I do, I just make like a really random weird ass picture and just put believe in something and put the logo on it. That's all I do.
I love that. I
Just
love that.
like
That's
random stuff.
that's very that's also very ticker Bitcoin coded.
True. Yeah, it is. It is kind of.
Which I love.
But
Which I love.
that was the community I was in too, in a big
Yeah,
way
yeah.
previously.
Yeah,
So
I love.
I still do love them. I got a couple Sprotos too and stuff.
Oh, totally
Yep.
same.
Yep.
I'm super bullish.
Yeah. I do love that too. Okay, so what helps you to persist and continue on?
Honestly, um I think that it's both my students and seeing the world that they're entering, um, and just wanting more for them. Like I don't have kids of my own at the moment, but yeah, just wanting more for them and mentoring their research. I see how much they're capable of, and I see how the world that they are born into really stifles that. And if they didn't have me, for example, as their research mentor, it's not that some of them wouldn't achieve what they have achieved, but maybe not as early on and maybe not to the extent that they have. And I just think that I look at humans like, and this is what I say to my students, I see humans as supercomputers. Like, I really mean it. And all those AI algorithms I was talking about with you before, natural language processing, like, we're having a conversation right now, and you can discern when I'm talking about things with negative sentiment versus positive sentiment. You can interpret meaning from the words I'm creating. At the same time, you can look at me and you can discern my hand from my face. And so you are also doing like object detection. And so anyway, the point is, and I'm very oversimplifying it right now. The point is that we are running a multitude of these algorithms in parallel, iteratively, every single moment to account for our dynamic environments. And if people have the realization of what they are, I think we will create a better world going forward. And I think what SPX is kind of doing is it's almost like an incubator for people to understand the magnitude of what it really means to be human.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so that is really the
That is
reason.
so funny you mentioned it. That's another some of my I do make videos out. So a lot of the videos I'm making now is just like clips from the podcast. It's like a well to get it content from. But what I
Mm,
still do sometimes is whenever I see like a fun or like a clip from like people in high school in the '90s, like just goofing off and being funny, and it just reminds me
mhm.
when I was a kid, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I'll take that and then I'll just put like some SPX stuff information in the logo because I really like a lot of times I'll say become human again. There's this like
Yeah.
clip with
Yes.
just
That's right.
yeah. So I felt the exact same way.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, and I really mean it when I say I think that we've been reduced. I think there is, whether it's intentional or not, I think humans are starting to be reduced to sort of robots or even just our animalistic sort of state, where if we aren't, back to Hegel saying like, well, art takes nature and it elevates it to the realm of ideals. If we aren't doing that, with the nature we encounter or with our own human nature, right? Our human nature is fear and like watch the chart and like do,
Yeah.
trade on the basis of fear. But what SPX has done is it's enacted certain frameworks and it said, lift yourself out of that animalistic, fear driven survival mode and just exist up here for a moment. And it has elevated us as traders towards the realm of ideas, which you could say believers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it has restored a sense of humanity for the people who have participated in it. And I want the rest of humanity to kind of experience that. Like, just,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to, and they might not be traders, so the fear thing might not come into play here, but with the pandemic, like everyone being so afraid to exist and to interact with other people, and it's like this is used to control us in all aspects of our existence. And if you get it right in one context, you start to generalize to other places.
I think the
So
COVID really, for me, speaking of that, that separated the wheat from the chaff, in my opinion.
yeah, it totally did.
Oh my God.
Totally did.
I don't want to go into that too much, but yeah, that was awful.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Yeah, yeah.
uh, okay, a couple more things. So what is your beef with Peter Thiel?
So it goes back to the whole, reducing humans to just consumers. And it's also a spiritual thing. Like if you're doing talks on like, the Antichrist and stuff, it's just like, there's I'm not attending this talk. So, maybe it's just a clickbait kind of
He
a
did.
title.
He did that really.
He was gonna do that. I don't know if he did it yet. I don't pay all that much attention to him, but I think he is kind of one of the figures that I would say is sort of underlying the shift towards tech over the human worth. And I'm using the words human worth because it's the way that Undy kind of captured it in that video about how like AI is not a tool to help us. Like it's actually sort of a tool to enslave us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they're using it to get data from us, and they're using it to reduce us to this state where we are like less valuable than the instrumentation, the machine. And so anyone like Palantir as a whole, I just have a problem with.
Yeah.
Um, and I have a problem with it because I also think there might be other things behind the scenes in terms of like their connection to intelligence agencies. I think there's more to it than meets the eye.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so a tool that appears like it could be useful to us is also learning about us and taking our information. And so I just feel like if Web3 is meant to sort of buffer us and like protect our anonymity if we choose to have it protected, then people really ought to think twice in the area of like what technology they're interacting with. Because these things, they used to have to create stimuli to get data as to how things scale. So, for example, creating an earthquake or creating a terrorist attack, and whether it's like this happened for the reason they said it happened or didn't, that's not the part that I'm really talking about here.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But these are all data collection events. So when a big event happens, it's a data collection event and it's run through supercomputers, and probability density functions are run to figure out if something similar to this were to happen, if we adjust the parameters just a little bit, how will the human response differ probabilistically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you create these sort of statistical relationships between variables. And suddenly you can use this one stimulus to create prediction models for a variety of other types of stimuli. And so I think data used to be collected that way. But now with all of these AI algorithms being scaled and it's being shoved in your face, use Grok, use this, use that. Um, all of a sudden, data is very, very accessible.
Yeah.
These forces that I don't believe are benevolent, that I do believe are like married to these intelligence agencies, and that I do believe is being leveraged in the context of foreign affairs.
Mhm. Yep, and it's kind of inescapable.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely true. Yep. I kind of figured it was something like that, but yeah, that makes sense. I just thought it was I like you challenging him to a fight or something. I thought it was
Oh
funny.
yeah, yeah, that's right.
That's what I got it wrong. Well, actually, Aeon girl reached out to me. Or no, I reached out to her. She's working on a logo for the show, and
Yeah,
I knew she respects you a lot. So I asked
yeah,
her if she wanted
awesome.
me to ask you anything. That was one of the things
Oh,
gave
that's
me.
so funny.
And
I adore her. She's I know her through my friend Drippy, who
yes,
I know Drippy IRL, and we both got into SPX really early on, and he's a legend. So anyone that he onboards is good with me.
yeah. Do you have any final thoughts?
Final thoughts is I cannot express my gratitude enough for you doing these shows and just platforming all of the people in the community who make SPX what it is. I think that not a single one of these shows is more important than the next. And I hope that you do it, perpetually.
That's the goal.
I hope that your show persists forever, because it is like the most important thing that you could do is like delve a little bit deeper into why someone is here
Hmm.
and what their sort of agenda and their motives are. And, a lot of times that is the aspect that's missing from any kind of company that scales. And if this project is thought of as a company,
Right.
we are all board members in a sense, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes really important to find out why people are here, what motivates them, and what their end game is. So my final thought is just what you're doing is to me one of the most important things that could possibly be done. And I'm just super, super grateful that you just did it by your own willpower. And it's amazing what you're doing. I'm really excited. I haven't watched the hype episode yet, but it's on my agenda for this weekend. So I'm looking forward to that. And just, yeah, I'm really, really appreciative to you.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. That means a lot. Yeah, I didn't know where it was going to go. I just at the time I was like, I think this guy who wrote a book needs to be heard from more. It's not enough. That was literally it. And then I just kept going with it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's been good. I appreciate that. Yeah, and I've said this before. If somebody does want to be on, if you reach out to me asking you want to be on, you have. I'm gonna try to make it happen for sure. I've had several people reach out since I've said that before. So
Nice.
if you do feel that urge, that definitely makes it more likely to happen. So,
Beautiful.
um, yeah. If and for those who are still watching, I appreciate it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It helps the channel. And thank you so much, Spacey, for coming on. It's been great. I think the community is going to love it because you're a big part of it. So yeah, I really appreciate it. I'm look forward to hearing all the feedback from people. And
Awesome. Same.
yep. Until next time, persist forever, Aeons.
6,900 is greater than 500.
There you go.